Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today, our guest is Chris Bur. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing wonderful, Lynn. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I had you on my podcast. That was a great episode. Thanks for returning the favor. I'm excited to geek out about some science with your audience.
Well, let's dive into the science because I've never actually had anybody that's affiliated with a Nobel Prize. I am like so excited about this.
Okay, so affiliated is potential, right? So let's just be very clear. I did not win the Nobel Prize, right? I am working with a molecule, and I've actually, my business partner bought beers for some of the professors who actually did win the Nobel Prize. So I just want to be clear about that. But I have been working with this technology since before they won the Nobel Prize. And so we're the oldest and longest manufacturer of the ESS60 molecule on the planet. And for 5 years, we were delivering to research institutions around the world. I think it's reasonable to suggest that the fact that we were delivering this material to researchers is part of the reason they could understand what an amazing molecule it was, and that those researchers who discovered it did, in fact, deserve the Nobel Prize.
Chris, why should we care about a carbon molecule?
Yeah,
why does it matter?
That's a great question. Well, I guess, I mean, we can start top down, right? It won the Nobel Prize. So that gets interesting. Well, and again, molecules can't win Nobel Prizes, but we kind of say it won the Nobel Prize. Here's a couple of things that are pretty fantastic. So I'm going to hold up a model of the molecule. If you're listening to the podcast, just imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. So you have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms. It's the first closed caged molecule ever discovered. Every other molecule has dangling ends that can be interacted with depending on their kind of electrical potential. Maybe they're not very reactive, but they do have dangling ends. This is the first closed cage molecule. In fact, there's a new symbol in chemistry because of this molecule. And you know, that might be one of the indications that you're going to win a Nobel Prize. If there's a new symbol in chemistry because of the thing you discovered, you're probably going to win a Nobel Prize. So the @ symbol is, the one from our email address is associated with. So if you say this molecule lanthanum at this molecule, what that means is lanthanum physically trapped inside of the molecule. So again, remember, you got that soccer ball cage. The interior volume is big enough for any atom on the periodic chart to fit inside of it. So lanthanum we call it ESS60, means lanthanum trapped inside the molecule.
And Chris, let me just start and interrupt, but just so you know, if there's sciencey people listening, you know, they're maybe familiar with C60.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're talking about ESS60, is there a difference or is it synonymous?
They're in a sense. So here's how we think about it. C60, carbon 60, is for industrial applications, right? And in fact, we'll talk about inks, batteries, cars, tires, photocells. So C60 is for industrial applications. There's peer-reviewed published research that proves if you process it improperly, it's harmful. ESS60 is C60 that's been processed for people and pets, right? So that's kind of the demarcation. If you want to use it for industrial applications, and we continue to this day to sell to research institutions around the world so that they can put it in their studies into inks, batteries, tires, photocells. The molecule is pretty spectacular. It has 6-fold symmetry. So there's 6 planes through this molecule through which it's symmetric. What that does is it makes it incredibly resilient. If you fire this molecule at a plate of steel at 15,000 miles an hour, most molecules will just shred apart. I kind of picture this one like a ball, you know, kind of compressing and then bouncing right back. It's the largest known molecule to exhibit quantum behavior. right? So you're kind of maybe familiar with the slit test of quantum behavior. This one actually exhibits quantum behavior, and it's the largest molecule to do that. I do say it performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. And I do kind of secretly hope that someday they make a battery out of it, because you affectionately call this a buckyball. And that name comes from, of course, the ball shape. But the Buckminster Fuller, who's the inspiration for the whole collection of molecules, and they're called fullerenes. So you have 60 carbon atoms, 70 carbon atoms, 76 carbon atoms, all the way up, different kind of, they get a little bit more oblong and then a little more spherical, and all of those are called fullerenes. They call this one the buckyball after, again, Buckminster Fuller. He's the one who brought the geodesic dome into prominence. So this shape is the same shape that you would see outside the Epcot Center, which is that geodesic dome. And yeah, so it's a pretty spectacular. So already, and we haven't even got into the health reasons, right? Already, this is a pretty fantastic molecule.
But why did somebody set out like, I want to discover a new molecule? Was there a reason? Was there an accidental discovery, or was there a purpose and a focus to this?
No, that's a great question. I would say it's 100% accidental, with the intent of understanding a spectrum that was out in space. And by the way, all of this that we're talking in a lot more details in my book, Live Longer and Better. So a Dr. Harold Kroto out of the UK is an astrophysicist, and he was looking at different spectrum in space, and he noticed one spectrum that he couldn't identify. Usually, and I find this spectacular, usually they're able to identify, hey, that's a light signature that we're getting from space that's caused by this molecule. We know it because of the temperature, and this molecule exhibits that radiation at this at that temperature. And he had this one spectrum and he couldn't identify, and he theorized that it would be carbon. So at Rice University, they have a very special piece of equipment. What this equipment would do would shine a piece of laser at a sample, and that not a piece, shine the laser at a piece of sample, right? And it would create a puff of gas, right? Different molecules. An inert gas would puff that a vapor into a mass spectrometer, and then the mass spectrometer would identify the different molecules. And he thought if we could use this piece of equipment, those interactions are all happening in a very similar environment as in space, that he might be able to identify it. So this is a fantastic story. Dr. Harold Kroto, by the way, he's now he's passed. All three of these Nobel Prize winners have passed, but Sir Harold Kroto, he was knighted because he won the Nobel Prize for this. So he comes over to Houston, Rice University, and he visits with Dr. Smalley, who has control of this fancy piece of equipment. And he's like, hey, we should throw carbon in it. And Dr. Smalley was like, I will never throw carbon in this. Carbon is an incredibly boring material. I'm working on sexy things like titanium and different alloys. So rebuked, Dr. Kroto goes back to the UK. He comes back to Houston the second time. Same question. Hey, we got to throw carbon in here. They're like, there's a spectrum. Like, you don't understand. You can imagine like an excited astrophysicist. There's a spectrum in space. I think it's carbon. We can figure it out. And again, Smalley's like, I'm not putting boring old carbon. Carbon's everywhere. Like, I'm not putting that in there. Finally, on the third trip, Harold Kroto comes back to the U.S. Same excitement. And Dr. Smalley again says no, right? So now we're like, where's the story go from here? One of Dr. Smalley's grad students said, hey, Dr. Kroto, like, you've come over here a third time. I'm going to come in over the weekend. I'm going to throw some carbon, boring old carbon, in this piece of equipment, and I'll let you know what happens on Monday. There's a grad student, right, working, I don't know, probably 120 hours a week or something. And so he puts carbon in it, and he notices that there's a peak at 60 and a peak at 70. And what they thought they were making, which has really now been kind of identified as graphene and has a lot of is extremely useful. So they thought they were making graphene sheets. And why would you have a graphene sheet that's 60 atoms big versus 59 or 61? Like there's no kind of reason geometrically to have that. So they knew something was here. They started like cutting out paper. There's a great article in the Houston Chronicle that's talking about the moment he tapes it all together and it's got the right amount of carbon atoms and he drops it and it bounces on the floor and they've discovered carbon-60 and they submit an article to Nature magazine and it gets published in 1985.
Amazing.
And then they're off to the races. Like, how do we make appreciable quantities of this? At this point, you've got a puff of gas that can only go into a mass spectrometer. And so then a new process for manufacturing it comes out. And that's when Robert and I started a company manufacturing the molecule back in 1991.
Got it. So I want to get back to that and how that can be used to the animal studies and all that other stuff. But before we get into that, I want to talk about your origin story. So where did you grow up?
So I grew up all over the place, actually. So my dad was in the Air Force and I moved every 2 years. So I have 15-year-old twins and I shared with them last year, at your age, I had moved 7 times. Right. And they haven't moved we did move like, I don't know, 25 blocks over. So like their experience is very different than mine. Every 2 years, there were only 3 other people on the planet that I knew, which was my mom, my dad, and my brother. Very great experience for becoming a really tight-knit family. A great experience for really, if you're in any sort of shell, you're probably going to come out of it, right? Because like you have 2 years to make a best friend, and then you move on to the next best friend, the next location. So born in Alabama originally, moved every 2 years, graduated from high school in Ohio, and then my dad got his second civilian job in Houston at the time I was starting college. My family, it was always understood you were going to go to college, but no effort was put forth, right? Like, so when I graduated from high school, I didn't know where I was going.
But you went to high school in Ohio, so that was a base for like at least a short period of time. Was that all 4 years or just two years of high school?
No, just 2. Yeah, no, it was just 2 years in Ohio. And Ohio is the location of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is one of the largest, if not the largest Air Force base on the planet. So that's kind of how my dad ended up there. And that is where he retired. His first civilian job was there. So yeah, I really didn't have a plant, right? Like there was really nothing. And I can tell you when I was in Houston going to college at about the 2 year, probably at the 2.5 year mark, I was kind of ready to go, right? Like I was very comfortable moving every 2 years. It's kind of, I don't know, you get wired that way. And I was ready to move on, but I had to finish. And I, Houston is now my home. I've been here for like 38 years. And there's a part of me that could leave tomorrow, right? I still have those, that wiring. But at the same point, my business is here. Houston is an amazing city. I'm happy to be here.
But as a kid, were you a sciencey kid? Were you into like science and molecules, or were you like, no, I'm just gonna play sports? And what was your connection?
So I did a little bit of both. I played soccer and I got to a semi-professional level of soccer. That was, of course, into and out of college. I played soccer my whole career. And then I was the sciencey kid. So I was the guy taking the wall plates off and playing with electricity. I would take things apart, put them back together, not knowing exactly what I was doing, but somehow they often ended up working. And so when I was going into school, this is interesting. When I was 14, again, this is in my book, Live Longer and Better. When I was 14 is when I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. And this is a classic 14-year-old story. I had a picture of a Lamborghini Countach on my wall. And it was a bright red. The door, the gull wing doors were open. I could smell the leather. And I knew that's what I wanted. And I happened to find an article, probably in one of the, Motor Trend, Motorsports magazines, on how do you get a supercar, right? And it said, if you want one supercar, you should become a neurosurgeon. If you want more than one, you should become an entrepreneur. So having no idea how hard entrepreneurship is, like what's involved, I just knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. Now, what does an entrepreneur study as they're going into college? Today, they might study entrepreneurship. I actually had an interesting opportunity to mentor an entrepreneur at the University of Houston entrepreneurship program. And I'll be honest, that's probably not the path that I would even choose today. But back when I was going to school, that wasn't even an option. As I was researching the book at the time, I think there was only 1 to 5 entrepreneurship courses, not programs, but courses in the entire country. And what I decided to do was, hey, what's the quickest way to the fastest salary so I could have money to invest in a business? And I'm good in math, I'm good in science, so I actually chose engineering, which is why I ended up connecting with my business partner and getting involved, because in order to manufacture this molecule, you actually have to vaporize graphite at the temperature of the sun. So it needs to be vaporized with no oxygen present. So you have to have vacuum capabilities. It actually needs to be at a slight vacuum. And if we have a sight glass to watch the reaction, if there's no welder's goggle there, you will burn out your retina. And if you let that light shine on your skin, you will get a sunburn. It is, in fact, local temperatures of the sun. And that's what drew me into this project to ultimately start manufacturing fullerenes.
Got it. So as you're going through your process and you've become an entrepreneur, how many Lamborghinis did you buy so far?
I don't have a single one yet. I'm still working on it, but I kind of feel like the trajectory is going to be such that I will go from not having one to the option of having many. Right, like you're an entrepreneur, like you can see that asymptotic curve that could potentially shoot up. So I'm still excited, and I couldn't be more lucky, right? So in reality, I get to come on shows like yours. I got to interview you already. That was amazing. Then I get to come on shows like yours, share this crazy entrepreneurial, sciencey adventure, which all of those pieces resonate with me. And then I get the benefit of these customers calling us and sharing us all that they're experiencing, all these amazing benefits that they're getting, taking the product on a daily basis. So I literally hop out of bed excited to get to work.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. And I think just people get the wrong idea about entrepreneurship. They're like, you come in and you do something amazing and few years and you get your Lamborghini, but it's a very difficult. I think it's easier to work for somebody and make a salary than it is to, go out there and stake a claim. So let's see if we can help you get towards your Lamborghini goals. If that's still,
I like that. Hey, yeah, I'll take you for a ride in it.
All right, I'll go. So I'm curious about this connection between the molecule you described, the ESS60. So, I have a little bit of understanding of mass spec, like in the cannabis space. When I was in labs, when you're testing different phytocannabinoids, you can see on the mass spec things come up and things that all right, you're aware that this is a cannabinoid, this is a terpene, and there's things you don't know. They're there. So we know that those things also play a role in the effect, but you don't know what the hell they are. And you don't know what they're doing. So you have this molecule, when I've read there's studies of extending life of animals by 90%, et cetera. So how do you create, going from that, how do you create a business from that? And how do you create MyVitalC and say, okay, now we're going from this to actually making a difference in people's lives?
Yeah. So that's a really interesting story. So it turns out that, I already mentioned kind of ink, batteries, tires, photocells, and some people are like, is this a health podcast? Did he just say that? Because no one wakes up in the morning and looks at their car battery and is like, I wonder what components of my car battery I should be taking on a daily basis for my health, let alone my longevity. And the story actually gets a little worse first, right? So you're probably familiar, right? This is the shape of benzene. There's 20 of them on the exterior of this soccer ball shaped molecule. And benzene, ubiquitous in our society, right? All plastics have benzene as the base ring, many medications, including aspirin, a lot of detergents. It's ubiquitous and necessary for modern society. But benzene, the benzene ring on its own, is known to be toxic and known to be carcinogenic. So they thought this molecule would be toxic and they put it in a toxicity study. in that study, they had 3 groups, and these are Wistar rats. So the first group was given water, that's the control group. The next group was given olive oil, semi-control group, and then the last one was given olive oil with the ESS60 molecule. Instead of being toxic, the test subjects that got the MyVitalC formula lived 90% longer than the control group. Now you can imagine that's the thing that changed the trajectory of me and my business partner. I like to call us happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientists, right? If there is such a thing, we certainly fit into that category, into the health space. But it didn't, like, we didn't wake up the next day after that study and go, we have a supplement. What we really woke up the next day and we got phone calls from people saying, hey, and it was really about a year. So about mid-2013, we start getting phone calls of people saying, how much of this should I consume? And I think you can appreciate, we've got our carbon nanomaterial hats on, and we're thinking, what we're hearing is, hey, that stuff that you sell to research institutions around the world to put into ink, batteries, tires, and photocells, that stuff, how much should I consume? And my business partner and I agreed it should be 0. We actually added not for human consumption to our labeling in mid-2013. So if you think the course of history of the business from 1991 all the way to mid-2013, we didn't have to put not for human consumption on the labeling. And you know, it's this crazy, wacky group of people who want to consume this. They're called biohackers. And I can say that affectionately because I am a biohacker. I just got back from Dave Asprey's biohacking conference. And there are people at these conferences, like we sell it in a little ampule. You'll hand it to them. They'll open it, start taking it and say, what is this? Right, these are biohackers.
One of them.
You're yeah. Guess what? I am now too. I probably hesitate a little bit, but not much. If there's a booth at an event, it's not going to kill you, is your hope, I guess. So this same crazy, wacky group of people, after we put not for human consumption on the labeling, are calling us 2 to 3 times a week. And they're saying, hey, Chris, my knee pain is gone. And I'm going, you mean the knee pain of your rat, right? Because it literally says not for human consumption on the labeling. And they're like, yeah. Hey, if my rat weighs 275 pounds and does HIIT training on Tuesdays and Thursdays, how much should my rat be taking? Which, by the way, is more. But yeah, so we know what's going on. My business partner and I are getting together every quarter going, hey, do we want to get into the supplement industry? And you know, like, it's fair, it's generous to say that the supplement industry is a challenged industry, right? Like, you hear of something new and you're like, oh my God, I would like to try that. How do I find a reliable source? Like, and if you're in the space like you and I are, you know, that's non-trivial, right? Even consumers kind of know, but they end up like going on to Amazon, which would not be my recommendation because, you know, a 5-star review on Amazon doesn't mean anything regarding a supplement. It just means that they weren't dead before Amazon harassed them enough to leave a review. Like, that's literally, it's like, think about vitamin C. What's a 5-star review about vitamin C mean? You and I both know they didn't weigh it, right? They didn't put it in an HPLC and make sure it was ascorbic acid. Like, none of that has happened. They didn't even count the tablets, right? So that's what the end consumer does. And so we kind of, every quarter we're getting together, we don't want to get into this industry. Even in the middle of that time frame, right, between mid-2013 and 2017, I found an article that said 50% of the supplements that this research group purchased off the market didn't have in them what they said they had in them, right? A full 50%. So we didn't want to get in this. Finally, at the end of 2017, a guy with a big YouTube following started talking about all the benefits he was getting taking it on a daily basis. And our phone went from ringing from 2 to 3 times per week to 10 times a day. So now my business partner, at that quarterly meeting, it's a different conversation, right? Hey, this is an entrepreneurial opportunity beyond which we ever imagined. We looked back to that paper where 50% of the supplements on the market don't have in them what they say they have in them. And we thought, that's going to happen to this industry. We're in an extremely unique position. We're the oldest and longest manufacturers of the molecule on the planet. We have the HPLC. We have the expertise to work on the molecule. So it was at the beginning of 2018. Well, we finally wrapped up and we asked 2 questions. The first is a moral question. Are we comfortable selling it? So I take it, my wife takes it, everybody on our team here takes it. By the way, that's not a requirement to work on the team here. They just have
It
access
should
to the
be.
research.
It should be.
Yeah, it should be. The cool thing is they have access to the research, and they have access to the product, and they also have access to the testimonials. So like 100% of the people here take it. And then the other one is the FDA, the FTC. You got to dot the I's, cross the T's, and we're doing that. So we really started bringing this to market in mid 2018.
I wanted to ask you, since you brought up philosophical, and we were in this I guess time that everybody's talking about living longer. So this is an obsession of a generation that wants to live longer. Maybe it's Gen Xers who are starting to see their parents go, and they're like, oh shit, I'm getting connected to my mortality. But are they equally as focused on living better as they are living longer? And is living better part of the mentality of my Vital C and what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so you bring up a really interesting question as it relates to me telling this story, right? So one, thank you, because are they living longer and better? By the way, the byline is your journey to living longer and better has never been more achievable than today, right? So I'll tell this story to a lot of people and about these rats living 90% longer. And I kind of get two responses. One of them, if they're from New York, they share, Chris, this is horrible. We do not need rats living longer, especially not 90% longer. You are an evil person, bury this research. But a lot of people will say in their initial knee-jerk response is, I actually don't want to live longer. Right? Like that's not my interest. And it took me a while because I've just, for whatever reason, I've always had 125 in my head. I'm going to live to 125. And then it dawned on me. What they're hearing is how much longer in some sort of state of infirmment, because people can't separate living longer from living infirmed. Would you like to live? And I think the answer for most people is not much longer, right? Like if I'm infirmed or certainly seriously infirmed, I would just like to pass, so that that's not how I want to live, is how most people answer. So, but if you change the question and if you say, hey, Lynn, if you could have the same mental capacity that you have today and the same physical capacity that you have today, would you then be interested in living longer, maybe even a lot longer? And that is a shift. And so a lot of people, yeah, I think you're right. As your parents become of age and start to pass, you start being connected with your mortality. I think we're just a lot more aware that there are things that we can do. And to be the classic, let's just have a bunch of drinks on the weekend. Let's not exercise so much, maybe just on the weekends. I think there's a lot of awareness of what needs to happen. But like if we just look at the general population, it's not filtering down yet, right? Like we're still the most obese society. I'm in Texas, so we're the most obese state.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot that people need to become aware of. We were talking about Dr. Gundry's diet, and I had the opportunity to interview him. What a joy, because here's a man who went from being a practicing pediatric cardiothoracic heart surgeon. So he did heart surgeries on children, right? He had an incredibly successful practice. At one point, he was one of the presidents of one of the heart associations. So he had an incredibly successful practice. And then he shifts everything to focus on the front end to make sure people aren't getting heart disease in the first place, right? And what a dramatic shift, because on day one, he even talks about it. Like he had a conversation with his wife, and his wife was like, I'm not sure this is a good idea. like we're going to stop this lifestyle, and then we're going to pursue this. Certainly it's worked out very well for him, as he deserves, having positively impacted so many people. So yeah, I think it's important for us. And I can share one other piece. I think it's important for us to be thinking about a health span versus just a lifespan. And if you're wondering what are the chances that we will be able to live a lot longer and a lot healthier, I love this data point. In 1950, medical information doubled every 50 years, every 50 years. I started quoting this next number about 9 months ago, so it's increased already. But Today, medical information doubles every 3 months. So what that means is at the end of 2025, we're going to have 16 times more medical information than we had at the beginning of 2025.
Yeah.
Now, some of it's going to be garbage, like we know that. But it also doesn't really, because I started quoting this about 9 months ago, doesn't really include AI. Now, AI will help you write a paper faster, great. But I think the real value of AI is I have 25 experimental concepts that I think might be valuable to the human biology. And I can't process the information as well as AI to identify which one should I do.
Yeah.
And then AI is going to tell you this is the one that's going to deliver the most value. So I think not only are we going to have 16 times more information, at the end of 2026, but that information is going to continue to get better and better. So whatever is actually possible with the human body is going to happen a lot faster than people realize.
Yeah, and the AI is going to learn and keep getting more accelerated as well. I think you brought up a couple of interesting points about this whole notion. Are people, so there's a myth, right? People perceive there's a myth that you can live to 130 years, but it's not a myth because we have other mammals on the planet that live that long. So it's already been proven, and we had humans that have lived that long. So yes, we can reverse engineer what they did, but you also brought up an interesting point about lifestyle, right? We have, and I don't want to call out a fast food chain, but you have fast food chains, you have all these different foods, and people are saying, all right, you know what? I'm going to take MyVitalC, and then I'm going to stop by my drive-through. I'm going to grab a burger, some fries, and Diet Coke or whatever it is people eat, but I'm going to live longer, healthier, because I'm also supplementing myself. Can we just shift the mindset? Because you mentioned the biohacking community. Yeah, they're focusing on genetics, lifestyle changes, epigenetics, biomarkers, but the general population, here's, I saw a study. You can live up to 130 years. All you have to do is take supplements. Is that really the case, or what changes do people really have to do, and how do we make these global changes for people to really live healthier lives? And one of the things, just to add to that, it's what Gundry was saying as well. We want to prevent some of these conditions from expressing themselves. Yes, as a heart surgeon, he's fixing things that are already broken, but can we get ahead of this before it actually breaks? So,
yeah, and what he ultimately found out is he could. Right. So his first step was, let me incorporate some of these concepts after surgery. And he was seeing significant improvements in the recovery rate and the recovery time and the progression or lack of progression in the cardiovascular disease after surgery. And then he was like, well, the only thing that really makes sense is this should happen before. So yeah, I think you're right. So I interviewed 55 experts for my longevity summit, and I asked all of them, including you, right, when you were on the podcast, what are 2 to 3 tips, protocols, habits, mindsets, let's call them shortcuts, because everybody likes shortcuts for longevity and a long health span. And the reality is, like, across the board, there's just no shortcut, right? Not at this point. Maybe there'll be some day where, there's some bullet silver. I call it, when I went into the longevity summit, I was looking for 2 silver bullets. The first one was one you would take and live forever. Nope, didn't find that. And the other one was the silver bullet that could kill us. Absolutely found that. We could talk about that. But there is no magic bullet. And maybe there becomes one, or election, or maybe a CRISPR technology, or multiple CRISPR, maybe there's something like that will be able to roll us back. And I think that's actually true. But that doesn't exist yet. And it's not really on the radar. It's kind of just outside of the scope of radar, I think. Other than that, so you've got to be focusing on the 3 things, right? Before you buy my product, make sure you're getting sleep, 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep opportunity every night. Make sure that you're eating well, focused on protein, but get off the sad, like you were just describing the sad diet, right? The standard American diet. Get off of that diet. When you go to the grocery store, shop only on the exterior 2 rows, right? Where you're getting fruits, vegetables, meats, eggs, yogurts. Like that's all you need. If like you said in the beginning, if you can't recognize it before we got on, if you can't recognize it, it's not food, right? Stay away from it, which I need to do a better job of. And then the last thing is exercise, right? You need to be getting 4 types of exercise. You need cardiovascular, which is really hit or re-hit is much better. Like don't go for these long jogs. Get your heart rate way up. By the way, do it under physician's protocols, right? Like, check if you're in bad shape, check with your physician. But you need to be, like my favorite is sprinting. I absolutely love to sprint, and that's sprinting on a bicycle or sprinting on the street when I'm running. So sprint, let your heart rate come back down. Do that 4 times. We're talking about 20 to 30 second sprints. So in a 4-minute workout, you're really increasing your VO2 max. I mean, it's more time because you got to let your heart go down, but it's 4 minutes of intense exercise. You need to be lifting heavy things, right? I say you should be sore at least 1 time a week. You don't have to be super sore. You don't have to be like, I can't get out of the chair sore, but you should know before or maybe 2 days ago. And then you need to be doing balance and flexibility, right? And there's some things that can check off all of these. Like I haven't done Pilates before. It's on my radar, but that can check off like 3 of those. You can do strength training, balance training, and flexibility training in one workout. So
yoga as well. Yeah.
Also, yeah, or Tai Chi or like exactly.
You mentioned one thing about there's physical health, and all the exercise you mentioned and putting good things in your body. But one of the biggest fears that we have is cognitive decline. So exercise, wonderful, good, putting good. I don't think people realize that the food they put in their bodies also affect their cognitive decline. We're in the middle of a clinical trial for Alzheimer's of a new drug called TB006. And one of the things that we're talking about is the galactin-3 molecule and amyloid plaque, the same plaque that Gundry was talking about, in your heart and your arteries. Well, that's what's going on in your brain as well. And if you keep putting things if you have genetic predisposition to APOE and you put these kind of things in your body, you create amyloid plaque, same as your arteries in your brain. So I want to talk to you about MyVitalC's support for mental cognition, and should you be doing another type of exercise for your mental health, not just your physical health?
Well, so training, like vigorous training, actually releases a lot of BDNF, right? Brain-derived BDNF, neurotropic factor. So it's actually one of the healthiest things you can do for your brain. So again, we'll start there, right? Make sure that you're doing that training. Let me talk a little bit about what we think is the mechanism of action. And I've got this whole long thing. I'm going to skip to the really fun, juicy science piece, which is what we call the BOSS theory, which stands for Buffering Oxidative Stress System. So we know from peer-reviewed published research that this ESS60 molecule gets into the mitochondria. We also know from way back in the 90s when this was discovered, not only can it hold any atom on the periodic chart, but it can actually hold up to 6 negatively charged particles on the exterior of this cage. So what that means, we'll do a little kind of refresher. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of every cell. There's between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria in every cell in your body, except for your blood cells, which have 0, and your brain and neurons, which have 2 million, right? That's how much energy our brains and our nervous system uses relative to our other systems. Like every power source, there's a negative byproduct. Your car going down the road has exhaust. Your power plant actually has, smoke coming out of the smokestack. In the case of mitochondria, it's reactive oxygen species. These are positively and negatively charged particles. I describe them like little bumper cars. If they're left to their own devices, they rust, cause oxidative stress, oxidative damage into everything they slam into. When a mitochondria is healthy and at homeostasis, it's managing the reactive oxygen species with the internal antioxidants, glutathione and melatonin. By the way, I always pause here because melatonin, the sleep hormone, our most consistent testimonial is that people take our product in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night, right? So you've got a good parallel with the glutathione and the melatonin. What happens when you stress a mitochondria? First off, how do you stress a mitochondria? Tough workout, airplane flight with EMF, cell phone, smog, a tough email, a tough conversation with a loved one can stress your mitochondria. Now it's producing more reactive oxygen species than your glutathione and melatonin can manage. And that's when they start running around like little bumper cars and doing damage, except for this theory, this boss theory, where the ESS60 molecule holds on to those reactive oxygen species. So they can't run around and do any damage. And then when that mitochondria gets back to homeostasis, replenishes the glutathione and melatonin, then they can manage them properly. So I have a fun analogy, and I think like all biological analogies, it starts with Mardi Gras. A lot of biology happens at Mardi Gras, I think. It's the end of Mardi Gras, and you've got these drunk reactive oxygen species running around on Bourbon Street, smashing cars, windows, causing all sorts of problems, causing oxidative stress and damage. And you have the New Orleans Police Department, the glutathione and melatonin, come on, handcuff themselves to those reactive oxygen species and get them off of Bourbon Street. But what does the New Orleans Police Department do when they get overwhelmed? They stick those reactive oxygen species in a paddy wagon. They attach them to the ESS60 molecule so they can't do any damage. And then when they replenish the glutathione and melatonin, they can handcuff themselves to those reactive oxygen species and get them off of Bourbon Street. And that's why we say that the ESS60 molecule is the boss of buffering oxidative stress system. Now, you were asking about mental focus, energy, disease progression. If you're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, you're going to get head-to-toe testimonials. And of course, we have head-to-toe testimonials, and I'll throw some of them out. Before I do that, I will say the FDA has not evaluated our product. It is not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease. And any anecdote I share, just assume it's not going to happen to you. Dig into the research. If it's something that you're interested in, I will provide a link at the end of the show, and you can go check it out. Regarding head testimonials, it's, hair improvements, hair growing back original color.
Do you want to do a quick study with me? Let's see if my hair grows back. I'll be your biggest testimonial.
Did I send you product already? Did I? Okay, no, I will 100%, like no doubt.
I will try.
And then the toe is interesting. So we have an influencer that we work with who his big toe was bit by a crab when he was 5 years old, and it split his toenail. So his toenail was split from 5 years old through his career as a Navy SEAL until he was 65. And shortly after he started taking our product, his toe healed. At 65, nothing's supposed to be healing, right? So we literally have head-to-toe testimonials. And when you start getting into, you got to be really careful when you start getting into talking about Alzheimer's or dementia or anything like that, for a couple of reasons. One, there's the FDA is very strict on those, and there's a lot of research that would need to be done. But also, they're very cruel diseases, right? Where like one day things could be good, the next day things are bad. And do you attribute that to a supplement? We certainly have positive testimonials, but like just be mindful. It's a roller coaster, and it's
and we're not going to talk about a disease. We're cognitive decline and conditions. I mean, we're in the same boat. We got to be really careful. The FDA, let us know that no claims, no diseases. So we're talking about symptomatic conditions. You brought up like this whole thing of the bumper car analogy. I love the analogy. Like David Sinclair talks about senescence as these zombie cells kind of walking around. I love because I can imagine your scenario. Yeah, exactly. So maybe you can also, expand on a little bit about ATP and the energy it takes from mitochondria. And if you have these cells that are zombie cells or bumper car cell, whatever you want to call them, you're still expending energy, but you're expending energy on cells that really don't require your energy. And if you're getting energy to these cells, you're not creating enough to go around. So that's one of the causes of aging. And how does ESS60, how does it actually address that, I guess?
No, that's okay. Awesome. What you're really talking about is the inflammation cascade, right?
Exactly. Yes.
And you know, I'm about to do a little bit of dancing because the FDA requires it. You know, one of the things that we know when you think about aging, the medical community tends to think, not all of them, but they tend to think of it as an oxidation and an inflammation process, right? I'm in Texas, so we like to put big old check marks on things that we're good for. There's an ad hoc study on the web showing us to be 172 times more powerful than vitamin C. Peer-reviewed published research 125 times more powerful than vitamin C. So we get our big old check mark on that box. Inflammation, we have to be really careful because the FDA has decided, and I think they're correct, that talking about inflammation is talking about the diseases of inflammation, which is also talking about the diseases of aging, which is arthritis, Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, cancer. So if I say, hey, our product targets chronic inflammation, what the FDA hears me claiming is we cure cancer and Alzheimer's and arthritis, which we do not claim that, right? So you have to be careful. What the FDA will allow us to say about our product is it addresses inflammation related to exercise-induced inflammation, right? So we all had a tough workout or maybe just a longer walk than normal and felt that inflammation in our body. We absolutely address that type of inflammation. Now, I am going to share this. This is pretty spectacular. And at this last A4M, apparently we were both there, right? At this last A4M, we had a booth. This guy, Dr. Lane Young, came to me. I had a conversation with him at the previous biohacking conference. And he shared this, which was so profound that I took a video of it. He said, Chris, I don't care if you're male, female, pre-surgery, post-surgery, cardiovascular disease, otherwise healthy, your product will bring HS-CRP, so high sensitivity C-reactive proteins from elevated numbers, and his number was 9, into normal ranges in 4 to 8 weeks. Yeah. So this is pretty phenomenal. He also went on to say in that video that they're seeing improvements in HRV, so heart rate variability, kind of indication of how you manage stress, and sleep between 20 and 60%. So we're in the middle. So let's talk about HS-CRP. It's an inflammatory market. You want to understand your current inflammatory state, you would look at HS-CRP. And when he told me 9, I didn't really know what that meant. I had a conversation with an oncologist later, and the oncologist was like, if you have an HS-CRP of 9, we assume you have cancer until proven otherwise, right? Like that's how
it's huge. Yeah. C-reactive protein is a huge indicator of inflammation. If you have that in your bloodstream, then you better get further looking at
evaluation.
Yeah, exactly.
So to bring that down into 0.9, under 1 is normal ranges. And actually you would like that at 0. So I'm kind of doing some investigation. So we have an ad hoc study looking at HS-CRP. So for those people who have elevated HS-CRP, we're getting them product that we just want to prove up this data points with some data points, and then we'll take that into a placebo-controlled double-blind study. And then I'll share kind of my inflammatory status. So at the last Health Optimization Summit, which was in Austin, next to me there was a booth. The guy is a former Apple engineer and looks exactly like an Apple, like you'd imagine an Apple engineer. And he built an equipment that's looking at ESR, erythrocyte sedimentation rate. And what this is a little capillary tube where you put a drop of blood in it, you let gravity act on it, and the rate at which your blood cells separate from the plasma is an indication of your inflammatory status. So I'm right next to him. I was actually his best salesperson. I was like, you got to check out that technology. It's amazing because you find out the results in 30 minutes. The test costs $10. You just got to pay for the equipment. It's kind of crazy. And so he gave me a free test. In the results, he's got a biological age component, and he had me at the accuracy, maybe wanting, but it was 25 plus years younger than my current chronological age. Nice. Right? So that's one study. Then you go to glycan age. Glycan age is looking at glycans and how they attach to different molecules in your blood. And this has a curve that's very, as you age, it goes in one direction and one direction only. That particular test, and it turns out that's a really good indication of inflammatory status. Also, on that test, they had me at 34 years younger than my biological age when I took that. So it had me at 21. I don't even know if I want to be younger than biologically than 20. Can I still drink if I'm biologically younger than 21? Now, the next test, I didn't like the results as much, but I definitely liked the results, the direction. So I took a my DN age at 51, and it had me at 59, which I was like, I'm doing a lot of stuff. Like, why am I at 59? 3 years later, so at 54, I took it again, and it had me at 58. So 3 years later, I went backwards 1 year. Like, honestly, I don't know if you're familiar. There's a rejuvenation Olympics. You submit your data. Ben Johnson is winning with 30, but he's spending $1 million a year. And what's his last name is Pascal. I forgot his first name. I think it's Dave. Yeah, it's Dave Pascal is like neck and neck, and he's spending like 15,000 a year. It's like, it's up to you. You can do whichever you want. You can be second place for 15,000 or first place for $1 million a year. I'd be beating all of them because in that test, which is an accepted test, I actually regressed 1 year after 3 years. So this is, I think, a good indication. And yes, I'm doing the right things that we talked about. Eating properly. I'm getting good sleep most of the time. Definitely not this last week at the Biohacking conference. You can hear my voice is a little rough because it was a lot of talking. And then I'm exercising properly. So yes, do those things. And then also, throw in MyVitalC.
Great. I love that you said that because too many people come on. It's like, take my product and do it all and take my product. All right. Yeah. Just to shift focus from all the sciencey talk, which I love so much. I wanted to have some music questions, music related questions I asked. This is probably one of my weaknesses. All right. Well, let's see. First of all, if you remember, what was the very first concert that you attended?
Metallica. And I'm not sure I remember the whole thing. I do remember my neck was sore the next day from all the head bobbing, but it was absolutely a Metallica concert.
What was the last concert you attended?
Oh, let's see. Last concert. What was the last concert? I don't know. So we have here in Houston, the Houston Rodeo, and it's like, it's a full 3 weeks. There's a concert every night. And honestly, my wife goes every night. She's on all sorts of rodeo committees, and I'm not that committed even to concerts, but we'll go to concerts. So I'm sure the last concert I saw was there. I can't tell you who it was, but I can tell you at the rodeo, the concert that stands out the most for me is, oh my God, what is his name? Oye, como va?
Santana.
Yeah. And I went to this and I was thinking chill music, whatever. I thought, this is a good concert. Like, I like some of his music. It was one of the best concerts. The energy from the second they started until the second they ended was fantastic. And I always kind of think of it like maybe like a stoner. You listen to Santana's music and that's really chill. That was not how that concert went at all. That was a fantastic concert.
All right. So another music question, and it'll be the last music question.
Yeah.
But it may be a difficult one, but let's see. For the next year, you could only listen to 5 albums. And by the way, you don't have to remember the name of the album, like Stevie Wonder or whatever.
Yeah.
What would be those 5 albums?
Wow.
/ artists.
That would be a tough, because I'll tell you through my whole life, my relationship with music has been very different than most people. Like, you probably remember a lot of the songs, a lot of the lyrics, a lot of the bands. And I'm the guy who's like, I don't know, like, I know the popular ones because I've heard them serendipitously enough. Going through college, I actually really enjoy foreign music where I don't know what the words mean at all, like none. And so for me, the voice is often just another instrument. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I often don't know some of the names. I know as I think back to people that I would appreciate, I would have to figure out, and by the way, I don't know what it is, but I'd have to figure out some reggaeton music. My wife is from Panama. We love to dance. I actually really enjoy reggaeton music a lot. So that would be one album. Another one would absolutely be Angelique Kidjo. She's an African singer. You know her?
Oh yeah.
She is amazing.
Yeah.
It's so cool because she's, at least when I first started, she was pretty abstract. And every now and then you'll hear her music in a movie. I'm like, oh my God, that's Angelique Kidjo. It's amazing. Who else might I throw in there? I do like some rap stuff. I might choose like a Tech Nine for kind of variability to like have some variation. Um, who else? So that's three. I'm kind of impressed I got to three. Um, yeah, I think I would maybe some super mellow like a Sade
Okay.
or a Sade or a Seal. Like I
Okay.
kind of throw those into the same. And then I would probably pick up another one. I'd need some time to figure it out, but another one kind of more high energy dance. Probably maybe like a mellow Tiesto album or
Okay.
something. Right. So I've got a good variety that I think that's where I would land.
A nice mix. All right. So final question. I know this is going to be uh the question is please describe what your room looked like growing up. But now that you talked about your childhood, so you can pick a room that whatever room you want that actually is memorable to you.
Yeah, I'll pick the room. So when we were in uh Mon no, oh, in Dayton, Ohio, right? So this is my high school room.
Mhm.
I had jerseys from different soccer teams that I had played up to at that point. So those were on my wall.
Mhm.
I, of course, had the Lamborghini Countach. I had the window that I would sneak out of. It was straight straight out of the door. Um, yeah, and those would be the things that I would remember in my room. Always the Lamborghini Countach, and then yeah, soccer jerseys.
Hey Chris, where can people connect with you, find out more information about your company, yourself, get your book, whatever else you want to share?
So I'm going to make a separate, a special URL for your audience. Do you have something after the slash? So it's going to be myvitalc.com/. What would you like for your audience?
Whatever you want it to be. It can be EIP or everything is personal. Maybe that'll be the best connection.
Okay. So EIP,
Mhm.
we'll do that one. So myvitalc.com/EIP. I'll give you a little bit of advice when you go there. We sell our product, the ESS60 in olive oil, avocado oil, and MCT oil.
Mhm.
People are like, hey, which one should I get? We always recommend the olive oil for two reasons. The first is we're a science-based organization, and almost all the research is on the ESS60 molecule in olive oil. And just real quick, I'll share my routine. I like the MCT has a lot less that, well, let me finish that. So the second reason we recommend olive oil is there's a higher concentration of the ESS60 molecule in the olive oil. You get about 0.8 milligrams per milliliter in olive oil, about 0.6 in avocado oil, and then about 0.3 in MCT oil. And so my routine is I like it I do a kind of a bulletproof coffee kind of thing. I don't put all the ghee. I actually don't like how it tastes that much, and I don't want all those calories, but I do put MCT, which is oil, and then the coffee is, of course, water. While that's blending, I put about a teaspoon and a half of our MCT in the coffee. While that's blending, I take about a teaspoon and a half of our olive oil. So that's my routine. Some more advice on that page. We have a 25% discount if you go on subscription. So even if you just want to order once, go ahead and take advantage of that. You can cancel it at any time. Our customer service team has 1,000 five-star reviews on Google. They are not trained to talk you out of canceling your subscription. Take advantage of it. They'll help you cancel it. Regarding the book, I have a charity piece that I'm really proud of. So the book is Live Longer and Better. You can buy it on Amazon for $20. You can buy it on our website also for $20. It's not on that landing page. So go to myvitalc.com/EIP. There will be a coupon code for $15 off on that link. So if you want that coupon code, go there, grab the coupon code, go into the menu structure, find the book. And it's $20 on our website. For $10 extra, I will sign that book for you. 100% of the $10 goes to Operation Underground Railroad. You may remember the movie The Sound of Freedom, which is a great movie about a horrific topic, which is childhood sex trafficking. I happened to see the guy that the movie is about, the good guy, not the bad guy, obviously, about, Operation Underground Railroad. I saw him speak the week before that movie came out, saw that movie, again, amazing movie. We should get that off of our planet as soon as possible. So 100% of the signature fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite charities personally. And I met
Oh,
them
wow.
at a Tony Robbins event. And he gives a lot of money to that charity as well. So
Wow. I
definitely.
didn't know that. Yeah, well, he's got good taste. He's following me.
Exactly. And for Chris, thank you. And for my audience, I just want to say thank you for listening. Maybe we got really sciencey. I don't know. I love that kind of stuff. And I know if you listen to me, you do as well. And don't forget to subscribe, like, share, all that stuff. And I appreciate everybody buying my book, Making Cannabis Personal, on Amazon, and leaving wonderful reviews and feedback. It's been such a pleasure to learn. And even when I don't get the best reviews, still a learning experience. So I appreciate it. But Chris, I want to thank you so much for being on. Very enlightening conversation. And, I'm sure we'll run into each other sometime in the near future. So
thank you so much, Len. This was awesome.
Cool. Hey, everyone. So does anybody know what greening out means? I've been the recipient of so many calls over the years of people greening out. That means they took too much THC and had an adverse reaction. So I always recommend other things, but nothing really concrete. Now I can. There's a solution. It is called Antidose. Antidose.com is quick. It's rapid. It works immediately, safe, and effective. So I love my props. If you are toasty or you are burnt, that's the difference. Now, I also love the 1 gummy, 2 gummy, 3 gummy floor. So just be aware, very narrow therapeutic window. You know exactly what you can take now if you've taken too much. Once again, it's Antidose at antidose.com. Get yours today. Hey, everyone. Thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.